Hello and welcome back to I'll Knit If I Want To. I'm Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and this is where I try to answer some of your questions. Happy almost midway through December. I just had my last pattern release of the year, which is, oh, I spilled water on it. This is the Birch Pullover, named after the yarn company I collaborated with, Birch Hollow Fibers. This is the Sojourner sock base, and it is such a lovely yarn to knit with, and I've used it in socks before and knew I wanted to use it again in a sweater, and so I went with a really classic, I can't remember that. Looks really great. I swear it's just water. Not such a good look though. Looks like I spilled coffee all over myself. But yeah, I went for a really classic design with half fisherman's rib, and I love wearing it just as a pullover or layered like this, and I hope it becomes a wardrobe staple for you too. You can find a link to it below. I always get a couple questions on how do I find these links you talk about. So one tip, it's way easier to do it on your computer than your phone. I myself find it difficult to find the drop down for comments or show descriptions on the app for YouTube. So if you're having trouble, try doing it on your computer. But if you just look below the video, I wonder if I can show you on my computer. We're gonna see if we can do a little swing around here. Let me pull up one of my other videos. I don't know how well this is gonna work, but we're gonna try it. If I was fancy, I'd probably be able to like have a little box pop open, but yeah, I'm not fancy. So let's just try it like this. Ta-da. I'm gonna move my little key mouse thing. Okay, so can you see? Yeah. So what I'm gonna do, where's my mouse? Aha, there it is. So all you wanna do is, here's your video you're watching, go below it and you'll see like the title, and then right here you'll see my face, and it starts talking about the show. It says, welcome to I'll Knit If I Want To, blah, blah, blah. And then right here it says, show more. All you have to do is click that. And now you can see all the links and the questions written out, all that good stuff is right there below. So hopefully that helps answer that question, because I know I get it a few times. Sorry, just trying to make sure I'm actually in the frame. So yeah, that's how you read the links I always say I'll put in there for you, such as the Birch Pullover. All right, let's get into some questions. For this one is about ergonomics. How do you knit for hours every week without getting pains and aches? When I've been knitting for more than a couple of hours, I can feel my hands and wrists protesting, which scares me so much. It would be awful to be forced to stop knitting because of an injury. Do you have any knitting tips and tricks on how to keep your hands, shoulders, and arms strong and pain-free when you love knitting? So for me, I definitely take frequent breaks, and I do not push or power through if I have pain or discomfort. So definitely listen to your body. If it is protesting, then it's time to give it a rest. And I know that can be really hard to do. There's definitely been times in my history where I did not listen to my body and I paid for it. So one time I was traveling and it was a really long flight, and I knit through the entire thing, which was many, many hours. And the rest of my trip I could barely knit because I had like a little carpal tunnel from when I was baking. Back when I was a baker, that kind of flared up and it was really, really sore. So one thing I will say helped was I had, it was like a CBD cream that my friend bought me, and that was surprisingly helpful, and just massaging that in. But definitely doing stretches. You can look up all kinds of resources online for knitting stretches. I like to generally, one that I really like is just putting my arm straight out in front of me and pulling on my fingers just gently to stretch this area out. That tends to be where I get the tightest. stretching out even your hands and fingers. But one thing that really helped me was I switched my knitting style. So I learned how to knit when I was a kid, and I learned English style, or throwing. So when you hold your yarn in your right hand. And as an adult, I relearned continental. I didn't relearn. I relearned knitting. I learned continental for the first time. So that is holding your yarn in your left hand. And just that, I think I've only ever had fatigue in my hands once since then. So I think, especially if you have been knitting for a long time, I think switching up the way in which you knit, especially because you might not actually be using the method that is the most ideal for your body. Everybody's different, and I think finding the one that really feels the best for you can make a big difference. But I am going to recommend Carson Demmer's book on knitting ergonomics. I don't know the title of it off the top of my head, but I will find it and I'll link to it. And he's really the source that you want to look into. He actually even teaches classes on it. But his whole goal is, I think he used to be a physical therapist. I think that's what his background's in before he got into this, if I remember correctly. And so his goal is just to help knitters be able to have a long, happy life with their knitting. So yeah, that's what I would recommend, is checking that out. I am certainly no expert, but I do take breaks. I don't push through the pain. I do some light stretching. And I found, I think, the knitting style that seems to work really well for me without causing me any pain or fatigue. Next question. Okay, so I had two questions on this that were kind of similar. I think I've talked about this a little bit in a recent episode, not in a recent one, but in a past episode. But I just wanted to touch on it again. So, is there a trick to winding skeins of yarn into cakes? I bought a new winder this summer, which will hold up to 400 yards of yarn, which is convenient, but my big problem is when I do a center pull, I end up with yarn barf. Happens almost every time. Do you have any suggestions? And then the other question was really, really similar, where they feel like they have to like untwist their yarn as it's coming out. They're also pulling from the center. So you may guess what I'm gonna say, but don't pull from the center. I never pull from the center. For one, generally speaking, I like to stick my yarn tags in there because usually we're going to have at least some yarn left over from a project. And if you have the tag just stuck in the middle there, then next time you're searching for yarn for a project, you're going to have that where you can find it and you'll know what yarn it is and all of its info. Funnily enough, I don't have a yarn tag in this one, but what's going to happen when you pull from the center is your cake may just sit there, which is nice. It's not rolling around, but it is going to just come out in these clumps known as yarn barf, which for me drives me bonkers. What I also don't like is that once you get to the end of your cake, you have like this flaccid ball of yarn that just, I always end up having to rewind it into a tight little yarn ball because otherwise it'll get tangled. So I don't pull from the center and I just pull from the outside. I find that it is still very, you can't see down there. I find it still very stable. This isn't rolling around all over the place and you don't get yarn barf. So that is what I like to do. I just don't pull from the middle. Question number 3. So I liked this question because I'm hoping that other people will weigh in. A strange question. I have been knitting and crocheting for years, but recently completed my first sweater, the Weekender. I hope you love it. I love my new knitwear and want to make sure it's well cared for. It's winter in Michigan. Hi, Michigander. And I'm curious how your woolens handle body products like deodorant, body oils, and creams. I know I have to be gentle with washing and don't want any of my moisturizers to ruin my wool. So I personally have never had any issue with moisturizers. I wouldn't really worry about things like lotions. Deodorant, I have had issues with, and this is what I'm really curious about. So I found a deodorant, a natural one that I absolutely love. It is taken, I've tried a lot of natural deodorants, but I don't want to stink. And I think that a lot of natural deodorants don't work very well. So I finally found one I love. I've actually shared it in my newsletter. What's it called? Darn. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Isn't that just the worst? With like, it's gonna come to me. I'm just gonna write deodorant, so I don't forget. But I'll remember, and I'll link it because it's a really fabulous deodorant. But it definitely has a base of coconut oil, and I find that all of my clothing, including my woolens, like soaks it up, and I see discoloration, and I feel like the oil doesn't come back out when I wash my sweater, and even some of my clothes. And so I don't know what to do, because I would much rather use a natural deodorant. I feel like this is one that actually works, but I don't want it to ruin my clothes. So yeah, any tips out there? It's called the Deo. The Deo. Where is that from? I like it too because you can get refills. So the Clean Deo, Beauty Counter, that's what it is. Okay. So you buy like one, but then you can just take out the thing that the deodorant's in and pop in a new one, which I like. And again, I feel like I smell good, you know? That's kind of important to me. And so anyways, I would love to know, does anybody else use the Deo? Have you had problems with it getting into your clothing pits? And yeah, let me know what you do, or if you've tried anything else that you think works really well. But I think lotions and all that are fine. Also, other deodorants I've used, I haven't had a problem with. Generally speaking, I do wear tank tops under a lot of my sweaters. But if you are concerned, if it is a deodorant thing, and maybe this is just advice for myself too, you could just wear a t-shirt or something with underarms so that it's not in direct contact. Okay. All right. Here is a whole bunch of questions in one question about socks. I knit my very first pair of socks for the Curio Knit Along. Woohoo! And I'm hooked. I have a few questions about socks. You chose the afterthought heel for this sock, which fits so well and I find so comfortable. I'm so happy. But how do you choose which type of heel to knit? I know you have said that the Flegel heel is your favorite. Why? Okay, so the way I choose which heel to knit really generally is based on the design. So times when I have enjoyed an afterthought heel, a lot of times it's because it is my best option for continuity with the pattern in the sock that I've designed. So when I really want that to be cohesive and not disrupted, a lot of socks, different than an afterthought heel, you're usually doing some kind of like knitting back and forth. A lot of times there's short rows. And so for part of that, you're knitting across the top and the bottom of the sock, and then you go to working just the bottom. But that area when you're working across the top of the sock, if it's not the perfect amount of rows, it might disrupt your pattern when going into the leg. So that's when I opt for an afterthought heel. And I like an afterthought heel. Now, the Flegel heel is my favorite. Why is it my favorite? I think it's my favorite for a few reasons. I like how it fits. I like how it looks. I enjoy knitting it. And I like that there are no holes on the sides of the heel. I didn't use it for the Curio sock because of that patterning that I talked about before. What are your thoughts on a tubular bind off? I love a tubular bind off. I use them all the time. I know I have a sock pattern that I used it for. Can't remember which. I think I did. I always recommend a tubular bind off. I think it's great. I think the tricky thing with using it, especially for socks, and this tends to happen to me for one out of every pair of socks, and I don't know if it's the first or the second. One of them I knit tighter than the other. So I always have one sock that's like really fits perfect and is comfortable. And then I have one sock that's like a little tight. And the bind off's always a little tight and it drives me nuts. And I swear it's one sock out of every pair. But I think the trick to a tubular bind off is people, when they're doing their Kitchener stitch, pull it too tight. And then they don't have the stretchiness. A tubular bind off should be super stretchy. So it's just learning to do that Kitchener stitch with the right amount of tension so it still looks tidy without making it too tight. So what I do is as I'm going, I stretch and I make sure that there's no resistance, there's no tightness. So that's what I do to check my tension on a tubular bind off. Is it as stretchy as Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off? That's a good question. I never compared the two side by side, so I can't honestly say I know for sure. But I like to use those interchangeably. I will say I prefer how a tubular bind off looks on a sock compared to Jenny's Super Stretchy. If I'm gonna do Jenny's Super Stretchy, I actually turn and go the other way for that bind off because I prefer how that bind off looks on its wrong side compared to its right side. On the right side of that bind off, it actually looks like pearls, or what looks to me like the chain on a bike. Where on the other side of that, it almost looks like a sideways row of knits, kind of like an I-cord, and I just think that looks more polished. So I will actually go in the other direction, so my wrong side is actually facing the outside of my socks. And then I just use my tail to zhuzh up and fix the end of the round once I get to the other side. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully. Okay. And one more question, do you have a favorite washable sock yarn? I'd love to knit a pair or two for my granddaughters, and I know they won't, they wouldn't be, there's just an extra word, okay. Like, why can't I read? And I know they wouldn't be interested in hand washing. My experience with washable wool is it stretches and can pill. Maybe I haven't found the right one yet. So again, I would love if anyone can weigh in on ones that they really love. I've definitely tried washable superwash yarns. What I will say is I still don't machine wash those. I hand wash them. So for me, I don't ever use a superwash yarn for its washability, because even if you read those yarn labels most of the time, unless you're buying them from like Joann's or Michael's, I feel like I've seen different washing instructions on those washable sock yarns. Maybe they're acrylic, and maybe that's the difference. But superwash wool yarns, in my experience, they still tell you we recommend hand washing and laying flat to dry. And that's just the practice I'm in with all of my woolens. So I would love if anybody who does gift things like socks to family members, what has your experience been? Are there socks that you find work out really well for that, and that those family members are able to wash them in the washing machine without problems? So I think that would be great if anybody has any tips on that. All right. So I'm actually gonna skip around here. I'm gonna go to a bonus question, and then I'm gonna come back up to question number 5. So bonus question, a week or so ago, you said you'd explain how you walk and knit. I did say that, but I watched the video and never heard the explanation. I know, I'm sorry. Did I somehow miss it, or was it a separate video? No. So we actually went out to this cute little island where we hiked to like film me walking and knitting, and it was just did not work out. I had recently had to have an unexpected procedure on my face, and so my face was swollen. It was really cold and windy. I was kind of miserable, and it was too cold to really knit and walk. And so we just didn't do it. I'm sorry. But I would still really love to. I haven't forgotten. I just am like, man, it got cold. And I don't walk and knit as much during these cold seasons. I actually have, but yeah, excuse me. I have done it with gloves, but it's not as fun. So anyways, it is on our list. It may have to wait till spring, but I haven't forgotten. It's gonna happen. But some of my top tips to get you ready for walking and knitting is just practicing not looking at your knitting. A great way to do that is simply by throwing on a movie. You can always start by just watching something, because it's really just a matter of trusting your hands that they know what they're doing. And if you've been knitting for long enough to get that muscle memory, your hands do know what they're doing. And then keeping it to lightweight projects. You don't want projects that are really heavy, that are gonna drag or pull on your stitches on your needle. That's why I prefer to do it with socks or maybe a hat, tend to be my favorite walking and knitting items. A pattern that you have memorized, because it's definitely not ideal to be trying to look at a pattern while you are trying to walk and knit. I do like to keep it to one ball of yarn most of the time. That's just not always the case. Sometimes I'm doing stripes or color work or something like that, but I think that simplicity is key, especially when you're first trying to figure it out. So doing just stockinette stitch or a simple rib or something like that in one color is ideal. It keeps the project small. And then I think having a really great bag that's in a place that feels comfortable so that your yarn ball can just hang in there, the yarn unwinds from it fluidly, and you can just walk and knit. So those are some of my like top tips, but we are still going to do it. It needs to not be super cold. I'm actually wondering, today it's really sunny, so I might go out there and see if it's warm enough. We've had gale force winds like every day for the past week or two. So we will see if maybe we could do that today. I'll talk to Spicy Pete. Okay, let's hop back up to question 5. I'm a new spinner. Woohoo! Good for you. I took a beginner class and love it so much I bought a wheel. Congratulations. I also bought Yarn Texture, which is one of my favorite books. I mentioned it here before. I will put it again below for anyone who is interested in that. It has been really probably my favorite spinning book I bought. Do you have other recommendations for new spinners to continue to improve? Books, podcasts, etc. So I actually am... I already filmed a little I'll spin if I want to segment, because a few of you enjoyed last week when I got to share what I learned in my spinning class I took on woolen drafting. And so I just thought I would share. I have a lot of projects going. I'm looking down because it is a disaster zone right here on a frame. I have both my spinning wheels and fiber. It's just kind of crazy town. So I have some really fun plans for some spinning I want to do to close out this year, to give myself a little creative refill up. And so I thought it would be fun to share that with you all. So that is what we are going to segue into. So if you're a spinner, I hope you stick around, or if you're just interested in spinning, or you just want to see what yarn I'm making, stick around, because that is what I'm going to show you next. I happened to talk about a couple of different online class options and some of my favorite resources for spinning info. I'll link the ones I mentioned below. I have shared other ones throughout the year, so I'm gonna try and think about the other ones that I could link below as well. So yeah, anyone else who has some favorite resources, please feel free to share them in the comments, and let's head over onto the spinning. If you're gonna bow out here, I hope you get some wonderful knitting time, and otherwise I'll see you in a second with some yarny goodness. All right, so we'll just call this I'll spin if I want to. A few of you enjoyed my little extra bit last week when I showed you what I learned in my woolen spinning class. And so I thought it would be fun to just show you what I'm working on with my spinning. I just had my last pattern release of the year, which I'm actually recording these backwards, so I haven't recorded the Q&A yet, but we're gonna pretend I did. And I'm sure I told you all about this sweater. But as my gift to myself for the end of 2021, I'm gonna focus on the next couple weeks, last weeks of the year, just filling up my creative tank and getting ready for a new year of new designs and new inspiration. And I plan to do that with a lot of spinning. So right now I needed to clear out some bobbins. A few months ago, I had pulled out all of my Hedgehog Fibers club fiber and basically separated it into cool and warm, like blues and then pinks, and then I just spun it all. And hold on, hopefully you can still hear me while I talk as I run to go grab, let me see if I can find, oh yeah, here's my other skein. So I have, sorry, unprepared. Okay, so I basically ended up spinning up 3 giant skeins. Like, they are big and heavy. Don't know how much this weighs. I should weigh it. So this is all the blues. Very colorful. It was really, really fun to spin. I was shooting for a little bit heavier. I naturally spin pretty fine. It's pretty easy for me to get like a 2-ply fingering or sport weight, or even a 3-ply sport weight from my singles. This, I was trying to intentionally kind of thicken them up. So yeah, I think this is pretty close to a DK. So this is just dropping little balls of it. So this is the skein that mixed the blues and the pinks. And I really went into this without much of a plan because I just wanted to experiment and see what would happen. So it's very all over the place, fun, kind of crazy. So this is a DRK everyday sweater that I'm knitting. I think I've shown this before. Still have not finished the last sleeve, and I don't know if I'm gonna run out of yarn. So this is why this is over here, and I divided the rest of my yarn to see how far I could get on the sleeves, because right now without the ribbing, it's like perfectly at my elbow, and I can't decide if I need to tear back and just do the ribbing and end it, have it be an elbow length sleeve, or if I want to try and scoot it a little past my elbow, but it might be an awkward area to start the ribbing. So anyways, that is why I have not done any more on it, because I haven't made that decision. And you know, work, I had to do design work, so I need to finish this. So that was blues and pinks plied together. This was the rest of my blues plied together. So you can see it's a much darker skein than that one. And then last night, because I needed to clear out my bobbins, I had those pinks waiting forever. Look at how much yarn is on that bobbin. These bobbins are huge. I don't know how much they hold, but I mean, I bet they hold like 8 ounces. I'm sure it says in my little manual. So this is the Hanson e-spinner, and I love it. I really use it mostly for plying. I just find that I kind of like having one wheel. So I also have my matchless, my shocked matchless, shacked matchless? I think it's shacked, not shocked. Shocked. Over here, I brought it up to my studio. It usually lives downstairs because I do most of my spinning, not during my work day. And I really, yeah, I like doing my singles on there, and then I kind of ply on here. I like having one wheel for each so that if I'm in the middle of plying a previous project, I can still kind of get into a new spinning project over on my other wheel. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to get this off of here and wash it and check it out. I think I'm gonna use this for a shawl. And I think I'm gonna have it be pretty paired with a neutral. So I have some more hand spun right here. This hand spun I actually accidentally spun up thicker than I intended. This is a 3-ply, and I started it and then I went back to it, and I must have just been more relaxed. I don't know. It did end up being a little bit thicker than I wanted. I would say this is about a DK, maybe just a little lighter than a DK. So I was gonna use this for socks, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I still use it for socks. I really, really love the colors. This is not an organized segment. I'll spin if I want to. We just go by the seat of our pants for this. So, no, that's not that one. So this is why it's good to take notes. That happens literally every time I show this notebook. I should just not have that little piece of paper in here anymore. But oh, this is my breakdown for that hedgehog fibers. I did not have my notebook, and so I did my little math on here to know how much the weights were. Okay, so this is Hello Yarn. And the colorway, it was a club colorway from September. So it's kind of fun. I don't always use my club colorways right when I get them, but it was really fun to get this one and immediately get it on my wheel. So it was called Branch and Root. I mean, I just love these colors. And it's a South American wool top. So I think it would be great for socks. I think it's a fairly strong, I spun it up to a pretty strong yarn. I love that Hello Yarn does little descriptions of what she would use the fiber for, like things it could be good for. I find that really helpful. I do have a book that I can't remember the name of that goes into all like the different fibers and sheep breeds and everything and other animals. Do they do plant fibers? I should go peek. Anyways, it's a great book and that also goes into it, but it's just nice to know what the person dyeing it, what they might intend it for, especially when they are spinners themselves. So yeah, I'm really stoked with how this turned out and I would love to see, I spun it fractally. I did a 1, 2, 3. So I split the fiber into 3 and then I vertically, and then one I left just as it was. The second strip I broke into 2 strips again vertically, and then the third strip I tore that into 3, and then I spun them all end to end, and this is what I got. So I'd like to see what it looks like knit up. I do think I have a picture of this fiber, so just in case, we'll put it here for you to look at for a moment. Okay, so this is Cormo that I got from Rhinebeck pre-pandemic. So I think this was 2019. And wow, it is so unbelievably soft. I wasn't thrilled with my spinning job on here. So this is a ton. Yeah, approximately 800 yards. So this is 6 ounces of fiber. I spun it pretty fine. I underplied it a little. It's actually, I think I plied it on my e-spinner right after I got my e-spinner, and I was still learning how to use it. And I don't think I put quite enough twist in for my liking. And I could run it back through, but to be honest, I'm just probably not gonna do that with 800 yards of fiber, of yarn, because it's all right. I think it's gonna knit up just fine. So it was an undyed, I think they were both undyed. It was, one's just beige and one's white. And then I did a singles of each and put them together for a marled yarn. So I'm kind of thinking of doing, I had thought these were sitting together because I was like, maybe I could use those together, but the weight difference is pretty significant, which is fine for a shawl. I actually like mixing yarn weights in a shawl because I think that it adds a lot of interesting texture and dimension. But I'm thinking these. I just think that this neutral could be really fun paired with the fun in there. And I'm also gonna have a ton of yardage of this one as well. So they are gonna be different weights still, but yeah, I think I'm gonna play with that. So, and this looks very, very all pink. Once I get in there, there is actually some areas that are like kind of green and stuff. So anyways, that's kind of what I'm thinking with that. So I'm gonna clear that off. After I finish this, I'm gonna get that onto into a skein and put it in the bath and see how that turns out. And then I just finished spinning. This is a, is it the November? I think it's the November Club colorway from Nest Fiber, and it's called Hibernate. And that is like some of my favorite colors together. So there's blues and oranges I just really, really love. My other one's still on my wheel. That's what I'm looking at over there. So anyways, I am very curious. So a great spinner to follow here on YouTube or over on Instagram. Her name's Rachel and she goes by Welford Pearls or Wool in Spinning. So not woolen spinning, but wool, like apostrophe and apostrophe spinning. She has a Patreon that I think I was just checking out the other day that looks amazing. She has a great spinning community and she does like little classes, tips and tricks. I actually found her because I took her class on School of Sweet Georgia. I couldn't remember which came first, the name or the school part. Which I got asked the other day, is there any like online classes I'd recommend? I highly recommend School of Sweet Georgia. I should write myself a note to include that. This is why I should have my bullet journal over here even while I'm doing this. So that I don't forget. School of Sweet Georgia. Okay, and also JC, the founder of Pie Magazine, has a great worsted to woolen class on Craftsy, and I will do, I'll link that as well. So if you don't have a local place that you can go to for spinning lessons, I mean, I obviously recommend just coming to Portland and going to Port Fiber, but that's not always doable. So those online resources are really fabulous. And that's how I found Rachel. She did, I did her spinning for socks and spinning for sweaters, and I just learned so much, and it also just got me so excited about my spinning. She is just really amazing to watch everything she does. So anyways, that was the first time I had kind of heard of taking your singles and rewinding them so that you can ply them starting from the end you started at. So when you spin worsted, you're smoothing down those fibers as you're drafting them onto the wheel as you're spinning them. And then when we ply them, if we just ply them from here, as we're plying, we're actually then undoing that smoothing effect we did because we're pushing back against in the opposite direction. So by re-spinning these onto like a storage bobbin, or even a toilet paper roll, something like that, you can start back from the other end and keep your finished yarn nice and smooth with all that effort you put in using a worsted draft. So I got these storage bobbins from the Woolery, and I think they're like $4.99 or something, so way cheaper than a bobbin. Bobbins that come with the wheel are surprisingly expensive. Like, I was really surprised when I bought a couple extra ones for my wheel. I don't know, I didn't think they'd be that expensive, and they are pricey. So I think these are just a really, really great option. They're definitely more affordable. So anyways, I'm gonna try rewinding, and I actually, for my e-spinner for Hanson, they have this cool little tool that you put, I haven't done it yet, but today's the day, but you basically pop this in here, and then you can turn it on with your bobbin on here and rewind it. So it's like, oh. But these are actually called bobbins up, and this is a system unto itself where you can get them, I think before they had like a core, maybe, I don't know. Anyways, these can go onto, if you have an electric drill at home, you can pop them on, it does the same thing. But yeah, that's another option. So anyways, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna see if I notice a difference in my yarn. I'm also just curious how it will be with the color placement going from the ends I started at instead of going from the butts. Because from the butts, if you're drafting, you're going to probably change a little bit throughout your spin, and you're going to get a little thicker, a little thinner. Obviously we try to be as consistent as we can if that is our aim, and you're probably not going to split them perfectly. So you're, to me, ending, what am I trying to say? I just think that is going to affect where the color lands, going from the butts in a different way than going from the heads. So I'm curious. That's all I'm saying. I'm curious, and I'm going to see what happens. So this is just going to be a 2-ply. I thought it could be fun for some color work in something. So yeah. Now my headphone's about to fall out. Boop. I think my hair's in the way. Okay, so next up onto my wheel, I have 2 options here. Sorry for the crinkly bag. Should have taken that out ahead of time. So I have a couple different things that I am trying to decide what I want to do. So I took a little video that I'll attach, maybe right here. Hi there. So I am just finishing up some little samples for a sweater I'm planning to knit out of some hand spun. And for the first time ever, I am being a good little spinner and trying out some samples to see how I want to spin up this fiber. It is CVM from a farm in Michigan called Never Say Never Farm. And this is some CVM combed top. And I think I got about 24 ounces, maybe-ish. So I just recently learned how to do long draw. And so I did this first little mini skein is long draw. And then I did one with just a short forward to kind of see what I preferred. Both would be considered, I believe, well, this would be semi-woolen because of the fact that it is combed. All right, so the fibers definitely still had a lot of air in them, and it's very springy and fluffy. But I feel like it's pretty consistent for being, you know, this is really only my second time trying it since my class. So I'm going to knit a little swatch out of this. And then I have, this was my short forward. I actually, to be honest, kind of went back and forth between a short forward and a short backward. As I was spinning this more by accident than anything, because I think I would, it was just transitioning back from doing long draw to try to do a short forward. And every once in a while I would realize I was pulling back on the fiber. So, but that's okay. This is just a sample. Definitely finer. I spin short forward pretty fine is just where I naturally land. I kind of try not to fight against that. I think it's great to be able to spin the thickness you want, but especially when I'm preparing for a long spin for something like a sweater, I just feel like my body's going to kind of relax into where it feels best, and I don't necessarily want to fight against that. So I would even consider doing 3-ply instead of 2-ply if I did go this route. But really, I think it's going to take knitting them up into some swatches to decide. They're actually pretty similar. So yeah, I guess I'll be back with the outcome of the swatches. So that is me trying to decide for this sweater I want to spin for. And I did a woolen spun, but see, look how inconsistent that is. You can see the light shining through. You can see how thick and thin it gets. And then this is a worsted draft. I kind of was hopping back and forth between short forward and short backward, to be honest. But this to me looks a lot more consistent than the woolen, which is how it's gonna be, especially as a newbie woolen spinner. So I'm just really having trouble deciding because it says I have a sweater's quantity that I want to spin. This is CVM from Michigan. I said where it was from in the little video I put in. And there's part of me that thinks it would be really, really lovely woolen, drafted woolen, be warm and so squishy. I mean, this is very, very squishy and nice, but my fears are inconsistency. Will that kind of drive me bonkers? And am I gonna doubt myself the entire spin? And I think I will. I think I'm gonna keep pausing and going, oh, am I making the right decision? Because to be honest, I already have like a third or half a bobbin that I spun up woolen, because at first after I did my swatches I was like, I think I'm gonna do a woolen, like, yeah, and now I'm doubting it. So anyways, part of it might just be too that like I'm jumping in a little too fast after learning my supported long draw that I wanted to use for a sweater spin. Like maybe I just need to like backpedal a little and practice a little more. But I'm really excited to spin this up. So what I'm wondering is if I'm just gonna be happier if I do a short backwards draw worsted, and if that's just what I'm gonna be happier with. I mean, there's like the crimp in here. It's really, really beautiful. Like it's already really squishy. here's the thing. I know I'll be happy with it if I just do a worsted draft, and I'll be taking more of a chance if I do the woolen. And yeah, so I'm just hovering. I actually even like did a little bullet journal exercise to decide yesterday, and I really did come up with doing the short backwards. But it's funny because now I'm still like, am I sure? But I also have, so this is some Cormo that I got from Rhinebeck. So this is one of the plies in here. I have 3 more of these, so I have 9 ounces. And I actually thought it might be fun because I only have 9 ounces. I thought I might be able to stretch it a little bit if I did a woolen. It's actually kind of, so I thought about spinning this woolen. It's basically what I'm getting at. But then I wonder if I should throw this into my drum carder to add a little more air to it and then spin it. I get really bad decision fatigue. Do you? Like, I just get overwhelmed and I'm like, what do I do with this? I don't want to make the wrong decision. Like this, when I bought this, so this was from Marshmallow Farm. And that year they had a sign saying like they were done and their farm and their sheep were for sale. And I don't know if they ended up selling. I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. Like, oh man. So, you know, when you have something that you know you can't get again, you want to use it for the right thing. And so I think sometimes I get like a little decision fatigue or decision fear of making the wrong decision because I don't want it to go to waste. I don't want to mess it up. So anyways, I am going to think about it today. It'll take me seriously an hour just to get that into a skein. So I have some thinking time. But yeah, let me know if you enjoy this. If you do, I'll take you on some spinning adventures with me over the next couple weeks as I play around. But I think it's really fun. If you spin, let me know. Let me know anything that you feel like was like the top tip you learned that really helped you feel like you went like that step further in your spinning journey. I think I will say after spinning, I learned the spring we moved here. So that would have been 2019. I just had to do like my daughter's birthday math because we moved here right before she turned 5. So it was 2019 and I learned that spring. So yeah, I've been spinning for a little over 2 years and taking this woolen class, like dropped all these other pieces of the puzzle, even into my worsted drafting styles, where I was like, I learned more about my wheel. All of a sudden I feel more comfortable actually switching out my whorls for different sizes to put in more twist or not have so much twist. It's like all of a sudden a few things just clicked and I just found that so valuable because I really felt like a lot of times still when people talk about spinning, it kind of just like goes right over my head. I'm like, I just don't know that I'm ever gonna get there. I don't know. So that was really, really nice to feel like some more things clicked into place because I think at this point I'd really like to grow my confidence in my spinning and feel like I know what's gonna happen with the choices I make because I'm not there. And I tend to be willy-nilly and just go for it, which is why I was really proud of myself for doing these little samples. But I did these little samples and I still don't know. What I might do is that little bit that now I've spun, I think I might actually chain ply that to see what it would be like as a 3-ply. And I'm wondering if as a 3-ply, the woolen draft will even out more and look more consistent. And if it's around a worsted weight, I think I'd be happy with that. If it's much heavier than that, I don't think I want it to be that heavy. So we just got to see. So anyways, maybe I'll do that. I like to think I have all the time in the world, but I'll see when I run out of time today. All right. Well, thank you and happy spinning.